What is up, y'all? I'm the Gem Outdoors, and this is my channel. Welcome back to the CBR1000 build. Before I get started, I want to tell you about the GoFundMe I have set up for the person who passed away on This's family. They've been struggling for the past few years. Unfortunately, he was so young, and so he didn't really have anything in place to help them out if he did pass away. And so I'm hoping within the motorcycle community we can come together and try to help them out a little bit. She hasn't been working. Her car's leaking a bunch of fluid. One of her kids are coming up on college age. So I just want to see if we can try to help them out. So the link is in the description, so y'all help her out. And so let's get started now. Alright, so I'm going to spray it down with some degreaser. Spray it on everywhere. Then I'm going to take the wire wheel, set it down to the lowest. Just to barely brush it. So I'm going to reseal the thermostat just because I had my CBR1000rr leak on me when I put it back together. Clean the seal up. Going to take some acetone to it. Clean up the surfaces. Put it back in. Take some Honda Bond. Make sure it's going the right way. Wipe up the excess Honda Bond. Now I'm going to put some on the other sealing surface. Wipe up the excess Honda Bond. Alright, now the top of the motor is good. Clean the coolant piping. After you put that coolant line on, you can put I'm gonna make sure the motor turns over real quick. Motor turns over. I got the laser iridium spark plugs. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil on the threads. And just repeat the process. And these spark plugs in particular, you do not gap. Go back and snug them up. All right, so we're gonna pull the valve cover off and inspect everything. So, I got cylinder, I guess 4, maybe cylinder 4, top dead center right now. So the intake valve clearance is 16 millimeters plus or minus 0.03. The exhaust is 0.30 millimeters with plus or minus 0.03. So I'm going to 30 right away. 0.30 fits in, 0.33 fits in too. It's just real tight. Seems to be pretty good. All right, the valve clearances look pretty good to me. So I'm gonna put a nice coat of sealant around the surface and then seal this puppy up. Now I'm going to put the valve cover back on. Now for the coil packs. Now wipe off these vents. All this coolant like crystallized. So I put all the coolant lines back on. This one is ran behind this one down to this upper part of the water pump. This one's ran down here, splits off to the cooler, comes up to here. I took all these off, cleaned all the connectors, so now I'm ready to throw the motor into the bike. All right, so I have some lacquer thinner to clean up the frame. Get ready for install. So I'm going to clean the swing arm up real quick. So I'm going to start putting this thing together. First thing I'm gonna do is just lay the wiring harness over it, and then I'm gonna start putting the frame over it. So put the spacer in. You do it the other side too. So got the longer bolt. It's gonna slide in. You got a spacer. You're gonna put the spacer on the other side too. Then you're gonna put this smaller bolt in here. Thread the nut on. So I'm gonna use this to close this gap up. Same up here. So I got this bolt in up here. Got this bolt down here on. Got this bolt with this spacer right here. This bolt with this spacer. These two do not have spacers, only the right side. Two spacers right there, no spacers on the bottom. Now I can put the swing arm on and then the forks. I just cleaned this puppy. Now I'm gonna lube it a little bit. Looks pretty straight to me. I'm gonna take it down to here, this link down here, pull the swing arm up, just where I can get it in. So as y'all can see, there's a gap. You can see the axle. So you actually need to tighten this to close that gap. Just like all the spacers of the motor. So here's the frame, the motor, the swing arm, the wiring harness is just sitting on it. All I gotta do is clean these bearings up, re-grease them, throw the front end on, put the wheels on, and it'll be rolling frame again. I haven't tightened anything up yet. I'm just trying to piece everything together at the moment, but it's starting to come together pretty quick and looking pretty good. So I'm gonna take this steering stem, clean it off really good. Make sure you get the bearings cleaned and nice and lubed up with fresh lube. It's gonna be messy, but they're nice and packed. Make sure that one's nice and packed. You're actually able to put that one in the top. There's the inner race that's in here, and that's the bottom of the race. The bearing sits in between. This is the top of the race of the one up here, and then there's the other one that's pressed into the bottom. Got it in between. So you gently push it up through here. Top one in. Clean it off if you need to. You're gonna make sure to put the top race on. Push it up as much as possible. Put the seal on. Put the cap on. Try to get as tight as possible. I'm gonna tap it on with the punch. Tighten. Pretty good. So once you got this top on, put the locking one on. Goes down, and you put the locking nut on there. You're just gonna tighten a little bit. Enough to where you can lock these tabs up. So now this top one is not gonna come loose unless this bottom one comes loose. So now it's good. I'm gonna put it up on this stand. Now the front. All right, got the front on. Now to do the wheels. Make sure the rotation's going the right direction and the spacers are on the right side. Got the front wheel on. Rotors look good. There's a slight bend in the rim right there. It's still holding air, but there's a slight bend in the rim right there. This rim looks straight over here. So just a slight bend. All right, so I'm gonna put this rear rim on. Lube up the axle. Here we go, I got the rear rim on. I got the front rim on. All I gotta do is the subframe, and it's basically all the way back together. Just a bunch of miscellaneous throttle bodies, electrical, stuff like that, upper triple tree. Before I do much more, I actually wanna get this thing partly installed. This is the clutch assembly, and it's got a hard line, so I can't really bend it around too much stuff. So I have to do it while there's not much stuff in here. So you can kind of just work it back so it sits right up in here. Now I'm gonna put this ignition system in the upper triple tree on. Make sure you get these locked into place. Man, I am sweaty. The washer on there. It's tight as a mother trucker. Upper triple tree and handlebars are good. Now I'll keep this clutch from hanging. Gonna put the new subframe on. Now go put the tray in. Don't forget to put the lock back up in there. Now you can put the lock back on. It's the top piece. Alright, so this is going to come up with the relay and everything. That's going to come back up in here. So this is taillights, this is going to come back up in here. So this piece, this actually locks in to this bracket that's on the starter. This L bracket sits right here. This plug goes into the end of here. These going up on here. I kind of got it laid out, so I'm going to start putting the throttle bodies back in. So I got the throttle cables, I'm going to run up them in here. This is a pull, this is a push. So the pull is going to be on the bottom, the push is going to be on the top because it's rotating this way. So the one that's going to be pulling is going to be this bottom one. The top one's going to be the push. So you can just pull it all the way through, get it lined up in that. So when it pulls, you might need more slack so you can release some of the tension up here. Everything looks pretty good. Now you can install it. Just push it down onto the boots. Make sure they all seal right. They feel like they got seated pretty good. First thing I'm going to do is plug these coolant lines in. One right here, and there's one that goes to the elbow that's down on the side of the motor over here. Alright, so I got the throttle body on. I just need to tighten up the boots. I got the wiring harness just sitting on it. I have a little bit more to go. I'm going to install the coil pack wiring harness. I'm going to install the coil pack wiring harness. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them are plugged in. Now I can install this piece. Like this. So now you're gonna have these wires sticking up through here. Now I'm gonna put this puppy back in. Put it up on its bracket. Should be able to plug it in. This smaller black plug goes up to the steering stabilizer, and all these go up to the upper controls up here. These vent hoses go up to the top of the airbox. So these wires actually go on the outside of this bracket, and it sits like this. So these kind of just guide these up around the bracket. They kind of hold them underneath so it kind of stays nice and tidy. So you got the ignition wire and the starter switch on this side. Then you got the bar control on the left side. So it looks good and clean up here. The only damaged part of this wiring harness is right here. Got this plug that's missing. So I'm gonna replace it with this plug. Same plug, just from another wiring harness. So I'm gonna sit there and pull these out, pull these pins out, and then I'm going to put these together. So to get this pin out, you gotta go in here and lift up on the little tab that locks in on the top of there. Basically sits down and locks this in so you can't pull it out. So you gotta lift it up so it can slide out. So you put the solder shrink wrap connector on, and what I like to do is twist these so it makes them as strong as possible before you even put the solder on it. So now I can pull on it, it's got a good connection, but now I'll put the solder over it and then I'll heat it up and melt it. So now it's going to be an insanely strong connector. Alright, so it's good as new. Now I'm going to do the other one. Unfortunately, I don't have any black shrink wrap, so I'm going to put blue over it and then I'm going to do electrical tape. So I'm going to put the connector back in. Now it locks in. Put the connector up. Slide it out. So now I can put the cam position sensor back into place. It's hooked up. So you got this plug that comes off the wiring harness right there. This goes into the throttle body right here. This goes to the rectifier, which goes to the stator. Plug it in. Plug the rectifier in. Now I'm going to put the grounds on. This wire actually goes all the way over to the ones that are on the side. This one plugs in right here. This goes to the thermostat housing down here. This goes to the, I guess it's a fuel, it's a vacuum line sensor. Goes right here. This goes to 1 injector, 2 injector, 3 injector, 4 injector. These go to the top injectors and the ECU. So now I only have one plug unplugged up here, and got to see if I can find it. It's a 3-prong black square plug. Sometimes you got to kind of have to search for these things. I'll come back to it after I put the airbox on. So everything looks pretty good. I don't have to access anything up here. So next step is hook up these vent hoses up to the airbox, and then I can lower it onto the intake. All right, so those lines are them on there. I'll work that one around the back to where you can bolt it down onto it. So it should sit nice on there. And again, make sure you have the steering stabilizer plug up here, and so when you plug it in, you don't have to dig down here and try to get it. All right, the lower airbox is on. So I don't have the air filters in here yet because I just cleaned them. I'm waiting for them to dry before I oil them and put them in. But you can put this top airbox on, and you can actually access it from this small access port right here. So you got the fuel line for the secondary injectors. For some reason I can't find my box in, so I'm going to use this. So I'm going to do, this is number 3. I assume this is 3 because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to look on the manual to verify, but I think it is. So you got the ECU right here. Looks good. So I just cleaned and lubricated these filters, so I'm going to put them back in. And I did verify this is number 3. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Wipe all this oil off. So I'm going to throw this over, connect this sensor, screw the ECU down. Now I'm going to connect the steering stabilizer, plug it in. I'm going to clean these headers off. So before I put the headers on, I'm putting a little bit of lube on the bolts so they don't freeze up like the GSXR bolts. I already cleaned these, so they're ready to go on. And I actually polished up these nuts too. All right, the headers are on. All right, so this bracket actually holds the radiator on. Just pushes on to this side over here and actually bolts on over here. Put the bracket on the bottom. And don't forget to plug the radiator fan in. See down here. With this pit bull stand, I can spin it while it's up in the air. Once I get it up and riding, I'll swap the brake pads to make sure they're good. One last thing is hook up the electrical for the brake lights. Now put this puppy on. All right, so there was green coolant in here last time. Well, that's not gonna fly. I only run the Honda HP coolant in my bikes, so I'm going to fill this puppy up. Before you put anything in, you wanna make sure all your hoses are connected properly and tight. And this takes 3.3 quarts. Oh, shoot. So before I crank it up, I want to do an oil change. Now I'm going to pull the oil filter off. Now time to put the drain bolt back in. Now to put the oil filter on. It is already lubricated, so you don't need to add any oil to it. And do not use that nut. This is for removing only, or tying something when you're racing. These things are known for failures apparently, but I think it's because people use that nut and those welds break. So as long as you don't tighten it like that, you should be fine. So this thing takes like 3.3 quarts. So I'm gonna put 3 quarts in, like it says. So that's 3 quarts. After I crank it up for the first time, I'll probably put some more. I'm gonna put the fuel pump in. Make sure nothing's damaged on it. Put the puppy in. And this is actually that other plug that I couldn't find. It's because it goes to the fuel pump. Vent tube goes right here. Now to put it on the bike. So this plug that I didn't know what it went to is actually the fuel pump plug. There's 3-pin, you got the 3-pin right here. So I'm gonna plug that puppy in. So I'm actually gonna put the fuel line on first, make sure the washers are on there. I think it goes facing downward, and you gotta put the washer on, and then the nut. Plug the electrical up. Gonna put some fuel in it. Now to fill up some with these stupid gas cans. Stupid gas cans. I hate these new crap EPA put out. These things are dog crap. So I'm gonna put the upper fairing stay on now. So I'm gonna connect the headlight wiring harness real quick to test the odometers. 4,500, wow, that's low. All right, so I'm just gonna put this in here temporarily until I get the fairings in. Now I got the headlight assembly. The wiring harness goes around the front. So the center light right here, the plug is right here, and it comes around the back, goes in. The tip sensor is right here, comes around the back to the tip sensor right here. And that plug just goes up like that. I'm gonna plug it in the back. And I'm just gonna zip tie it up here temporarily, because the fairings is really what holds it on. It's plugged in. The servo's going crazy. Fuel pump's cutting on like it should. Fuel pump is working as it should. I put some more oil in it. Let's see what happens. So I'm gonna take it outside, let it run for a few minutes. 4 cylinders are running, and I'm gonna use a temperature gun to hit each header to make sure they're all around the same temperature. So they're all pretty hot, around 360 to like 420 around the bottom of the headers. I think that all 4 cylinders are running like they should. So I think that's gonna wrap up this video. So I only have to put the chain on, which I have to get. I also have to put the exhaust on, or repair it, and then put it back on. And then basically just fairings. So I'm really, really close. Next video I should finish it up. So y'all take it easy.